The A.T. Chandra Foundation, we essentially are the philanthropic arm of the A.T. group as well as the family foundation of Amit and Archana Chandra. We focus on non-programmatic areas that they need to strengthen. I tried volunteering in different places, but I only could do weekends, so those didn't really work out very well. You learn so much in that one fundraising role. I very openly share that I prefer candidates who've actually worked in the NGO. We had 2 team members who joined on April 1st, and within the next week, they were in the field. I really hire for values.
Today with us, we have Gayatri Leader. Gayatri is the Chief Operating Officer at A.T. Chandra Foundation. She holds a Master's in Management Studies and has over 20 years of experience in strategy consulting and the development sector. Welcome, Gayatri. How are you?
Thank you. Thanks, Santosh. Very well.
Okay, great. So, trying to understand a bit more about A.T. Chandra Foundation, the work that you're doing, could you just help throw some light on your work? Yeah.
Sure. So the A.T. Chandra Foundation, we essentially are the philanthropic arm of the A.T. group as well as the family foundation of Amit and Archana Chandra. We are a smallish team, about 8 to 10 people, but we focus on largely 2 areas. The first one is what we call social sector capacity building. And what we do here is help build the sector on 3 levels. One is at the individual level. So we believe that any organization is only as good as the people in the organization. So right from the leaders to everybody working in there, we focus on non-programmatic areas that they need to strengthen. And a lot of us join the sector largely based on passion, and giving them these, tools, knowledge, etc., that will help them get better at their work, we found has great impact. So in a year, we would be funding NGOs or organizations that support learning and development of about 500 to 600 participants. The second sub-layer is where we work at an organizational level. So we work with a small handful of organizations to help them again with their capacity building. And there are 2 reasons. One is for their own capacity building, because then they do better work, but also to change how the sector thinks about work in the nonprofit sector. Like everything can't just be programmed, because then you can't scale up your organization and you can't then start looking at new geographies, look at more depth in the work we do. If you don't have the right people, you don't have the right funding. So we focus on non-programmatic areas that we believe will scale. And then we take these case studies and the data to other funders and others in the sector to say, have you thought about funding in this way?
Very
And
interesting.
third is at an ecosystem level. Right? What does the ecosystem, what does the sector itself need to grow? So, obvious answers are more money and more people. So we really look at on those 2 aspects, especially what needs to happen. Does there need to be more trust in the sector? Does there need to be something like a social stock exchange? So we helped in the first draft of that. So different areas that can make impact across the sector. So all of that is one vertical with 3 people. The second vertical we have is our sustainable rural development team, and a very exciting work there. The first is on the water, where we actually look at existing water bodies that have got over the years got filled up with silt or mud, as you might want to call it, and we rejuvenate those water bodies before the monsoons. So when it rains, these are again like full and lush, and the villagers can actually benefit from this. Now we started doing that in Maharashtra, expanded it to Rajasthan and Karnataka, and this year we're doing this with Niti Aayog in 3 states, 6 aspirational districts, and we would have done over 1,000 water bodies in 10 weeks with again a team size of 3 people plus me. But it was intense. It was 4 days a week of travel to, really remote places that a lot of people listening to this will probably not be able to find on a map. But it was the most inspiring and most exciting work that we've done in the recent past. And the second subvertical under this is natural farming. Again, both of these, the reason we started working on it is we come from a place that farmers need to be earning more, small and marginal farmers especially. And both through natural farming and the rejuvenation of water bodies, this aspect that we want to focus on does get delivered. With natural farming, they don't need to buy fertilizers, pesticides, etc. It's all things available on their farm that they can use, and therefore their profits go up. And what we found is that yield doesn't fall. So essentially, everything that you save is then profit.
It's amazing, and it's very very coincidental that today in shorts had a small highlight on a gentleman by the name of Popatrao Pawar, if I got his name correct. He recently, I mean, the small ad that came up was that this is a village of millionaires, and when he got inducted as a sarpanch in the late 80s, he started working on very similar things where he wanted to build, the hold the water capacity, because it's a water starved region. So he kind of worked on how to retain the water, and then he also worked on how to promote crops which would not be very water consuming, hence the village and how the village grew. I think I can completely understand where you are,
Yeah.
and that if you are able to achieve that kind of scale, that's like phenomenal.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So one part where he said that social sector usually happens to people. They just like come here. What was your journey like? What drew you to the sector?
So honestly, the whole idea of social justice, of things just not being fair just because of where you're born, was something that bothered me. I don't know whether it was moral science teachers in school or what put that thought in my head, but it stayed. And tried volunteering in different places, but I only could do weekends, so those didn't really work out very well. And then I had a really nice boss who allowed me to do this on a Monday afternoon. That really was the trigger of sorts for me. I really enjoyed that process, spending time with kids. Figured I need to be working in education, but you know growing up in a typical Indian household, you are thinking about what does this mean in terms of my income and all of that, and my job security. So I thought I'll do it for a year. I'll take a sabbatical for a year, which itself I thought I was being extremely brave at the time. Took a sabbatical and then, yeah, never looked back after that. So I joined Teach for India. Not as a fellow, I joined in their fundraising team. Struggled to do any fundraising for the first 6 months, I think. But it just grows on you, because I think in a role like fundraising, you get to see everything happening across the organization. Right? You want to go into a classroom, you can go into a classroom. You want to know what HR is doing, you sit with the HR team. So you just have to know everything that's happening. And that's extremely inspiring, also frustrating, but you learn so much in that one fundraising role. That then kept me in the sector. I continue to grow at Teach for India, I've worked in other organizations, but I know there's no looking back.
Absolutely, and I
One
keep
year has become 11.
yeah, and something which I tell people who want to join the sector, I say that fundraising, you may be shy of fundraising, but that is the best way to enter the sector.
Yeah.
Uh,
By the way, I thought I'd be amazing at fundraising. Then I realized how hard it is.
yeah, it is. So when you join the sector, you join Teach for India, we all know the kind of impact that they have. So what was your like wow moment which happened to you when you started working?
It's going to be embarrassing. I think when I first started working, I realized how little I knew. Remember, I came from a consulting world where you're constantly projecting that you're better than everybody around you. Everybody is an A-type personality. So I actually thought I was entering the sector, and I can do wonders in the sector, and change processes, and do some re-engineering and all of that. And I realized how little I know. I think it was humbling, but definitely an aha moment. But I think through the years, one thing I've realized, maybe about myself, but I think it's true for a lot of people in the sector. The easiest way to lift your spirits when you're feeling down is to go and see the work you're doing. Like, just be in the field, be in a classroom, be in a hospital, depending on what your work is. And the either you're driven because, oh my gosh, everything has to change and I can't waste a moment, or you see a joy and you see inspiration and you feel like, I can't stop this work, I need to do more. So I think that's my secret mantra now, that I not so secret, I share it with everyone.
Absolutely. So in the beginning, you said that you have this crack team, right? Because to be able to do powerful work at that scale with a small
Yeah.
team, you need to draw the right talent,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah.
So how do you manage to do that as a leader? Because it's something that everybody connects with. Everybody wants to have this awesome team. So how have you managed to build that team and hold them together?
I think Santosh, I would first like to say I've been really lucky, and please don't jinx this. But I think for me, values matters more than how much they know. So one thing I know, for example, I guess very openly share that I prefer candidates who've actually worked in an NGO, because the humility it brings and the understanding of how hard this work is. I mean, it's a small team, right? I don't have the luxury of having, 3-month induction. People, we had 2 team members who joined on April 1st, and within the next week they were in the field, right? So I know what I'm looking for, and that's helpful. I need people with certain values, willing to roll their sleeves up and do the work required, willing to step in for each other. So I really hire for values. Knowledge is something that I came into this work not knowing at all, right? The foundation I work at now does almost nothing in education. My entire background beyond the consulting bit of my career was all education. Now I can talk about urea and I can talk about DAP, and you learn. You just have to be willing to learn.
That's a major lesson there for anybody who want, because I think people get stuck up the skill set, not trusting people on values and their ability to learn, because I think everybody can unlearn, relearn, upskill. So I think that's
And
quite.
I feel the good thing in the sector is that people are willing to help you, right? So if I say, look, I'm not a water expert, they're like, yeah, that's okay. This is what we need to get done, right? Nobody's expecting everyone to be. I mean, the fact that you're working here and you want to make a change itself gives you some kind in terms of your knowledge.
Absolutely. So now that you you are the boss, okay? What I mean, you are the boss as in you are leading a bunch of people, you are motivating a bunch of people. I'm sure this journey has not happened overnight, and there are many people who have influenced you to reach where you are. Okay, so who were the early influencers who kind of impacted your life? You mentioned one gentleman who helped you start working in on Monday afternoons, with the
Yeah.
center. So you want to kind of recollect that and how that's impacted you.
Yeah, so I can't say I have one mentor or two mentors. I think I take different things from different people. Very early on in my career, I had a really good boss, and I don't know if I've told this to him after that, but I was in banking and I wasn't really enjoying it. But of course, you do what you have to do, especially in your first year, you just stick it out, right? You say 2 years I'll do this job whether I'm liking it or not. But I think he recognized that and then said, if there was something you could change in the bank, what process would that be and how would you go about changing it? So he allowed me to identify bottlenecks, go and do like mystery shopping in other banks and see how they are doing it, look outside of India at how these things, what micro innovations can happen. And then I came back and presented to him, this is my idea, this is the process. It's interesting that he then helped me actually make those changes. I was nobody in the bank, right? One of 5,000 employees. Helped me implement that change. Even today, the bank is still using those forms and that process. So it's so nice that he could recognize that I needed something. And so what I've learned from that is when I work with people, really understand their motivations. What are those things that are going to make them excited to come to work? And again, it's a small team. I can do this. But my previous organization, we had 70 people. And I made it a point that I had to travel to each site, know them, spend time one on one with individuals, outside of work, going out for dinner with all of them. So you get to know people and what they like, what they don't like, what aspects of their work they like, without it becoming a, a festival of complaints, but more at an individual level. So I think that's one thing I really learned from that individual. But I think values. Both my parents extremely high on integrity, and that's something like my brother and I as well. Like we've never in our lives, and I can say this proudly, bribed a single person. Right? If we've got caught, we've got caught and paid through our nose with whatever the fine is. But certain aspects like that, I think it reflects in your work as well. There, the third, I would say, is value. I would say again from my parents and other mentors I look at is just do what it takes, right? To whether if it takes hard work, then do hard work. If it takes thinking differently, then figure out how to think differently. But I would say the last lesson I learned the hard way was knowing when to ask for help. very often you feel like you have to solve problems on your own. I've learned now, hopefully. I have to see if I continue to do this. But when I can't do something, I raise my hands and say, this is too difficult for me, I need support. But I've learned these things from different people in life. And I think putting the pressure on one mentor is a bit unfair to them.
So you mentioned that your values, right? So what are your core values that has stuck with you over the years? Leadership values.
Yeah, I think complete honesty, right? My team knows every day what needs to be done, how it needs to be done. There are no, if there is something that I can't tell them for whatever leadership reasons, they know that they're in safe hands. So I think that building that trust based on honesty is something that I value a lot. I think empathy, which goes hand in hand with building that trust. And empathy works not just with your team, but also if you're working in the social sector, you really need to understand the pains and struggles of people you're trying to help out. Right? You can't be this savior of all without even, I mean, you should never try to be savior of all, but even if you're trying to help in some way, you really need to be able to empathize and understand. And and I think, like I said, like just doing what it takes. Like you've made a commitment to something, you do it, right? You do it yourself, you ask for help, you work the extra hours, you step away and think differently, but you do what it takes to reach that outcome. So yeah, being outcome focused is important for me.
Amazing. Okay. You work in a small team. You said you started work in a bank where you try to help streamline processes. So, and those processes have kind of stuck even now. How do you use innovation? Innovation doesn't have to be technology, right?
Yeah.
How do you use innovation to kind of optimize your resources currently?
Yeah. You know, it's interesting because I think as you go get more senior in an organization, you get less good ideas. And innovation really comes from the people working on the ground. So I think for at a leadership level, it's important to encourage innovation. It's not upon you to come up with it because you're just doing too many things. It's very hard to step back and say, how do I do this better? Of course, there are times you sit with the team, but the ideas all come from the ones doing the real work. Or with, say, if you're sitting with say when we work in water, right? We'll talk to farmers and try and understand from them. So unless it's bottom up, I don't really think of it as an innovation of sorts. How do we incorporate it? I think we take the time to step back and see and reflect and see what could have been done differently, faster, better, more efficiently, and create that space where ideas are not ridiculed and people have that ability. And so even when they're working, they're constantly thinking about how can I'm going to be asked this question of how we could have done this differently. What have I learned in the process and what can change? So, we're working on water now. We're saying how do we actually do it better? Where we're working on water which has better groundwater recharge potential. So now the team has discovered a tool that we can use. So it's really encouraging those conversations and those questions. We do a lot of research externally. We get in researchers to tell us, we just finished a call where somebody's like, okay, so this work of yours hasn't been that great. And as soon as the call got over, my team and I were like, okay, so if we do this, this should improve it. So how do we, do this XYZ? So I think it's very important to encourage those questions and not sit back and say, we're doing the best we can and that's as good as we can be.
Yeah. Constantly questioning. It could have been better.
Yeah.
If what? So
And we have a advantage of being on the funding side, right? So you're not answerable to anybody except your board. And your board is okay, at least our board is okay with us saying we didn't do this as well. We could have done this differently. Like they encourage it. So I think that culture is important.
right. Being on the funder side also gives you the power of bringing organizations together and collaborating. So I just wanted to understand a bit about that. How does it really happen realistically in your space in
To
terms
be
of
honest, I don't like the word power, but
okay.
I think we do have the unique opportunity of being able to bring people together. In the work we've done recently with on the capacity building front, we have 7 NGO partners where we are focusing on their non-programmatic areas, right? So we did an exercise on HR. We brought in an external HR consultant who worked with all these 7 organizations created a framework against which they could see how they're performing. The ones that were performing well on certain areas got on a call, shared their best practices with the others. And the idea is to make it a space where they can learn and grow from each other. Now, it may not be collaboration in the strictest sense towards a particular outcome. For us, the outcome is how do these organizations grow and scale and sustain, right? Despite shocks like COVID that might happen. That's our outcome. So they're collaborating towards that. Similarly, in Madhya Pradesh, we're working on a collaborative with 16 different NGOs that are working on natural farming. Now, they have a certain geography that each of them is looking at. So there's no overlap. But the learnings that can be shared between these 16, say farmers from here are suggesting this crop for this season. And that conversation that they're not competing because they're working in their own spheres and their own geographies and their own blocks across the state. But because it's a coalition, that could come together. We got excited to fund it, saying that we want to be part of this because we'll also learn. So I think it is really a great opportunity. You just have to do it in the right way where you're not making people compete against each other towards some outcome.
Fabulous. Thank you for the powerful work that you are doing and the AT Chandra Foundation is doing. Some final words on how people can, come and support you in any manner.
So I think come work with us. We are trying to build a team. We're looking at across levels, not that many, but across levels, we're looking at people who are, like I said, the values are shared, but also really passionate. We try and we have a lot of fun. So that's something that we are quite insistent on. So I think people can support us by looking at our work, replicating it. We don't take funding from outside, but we share everything that we've learned. So we create templates that any funder can pick up and replicate in another state. Or if they want to do the same state, we'll exit that state and work somewhere else. But the idea is that we can't be everywhere. We're not that big. We don't aspire to be everywhere. But if the work can be scaled through somebody else, we are 100% open books.
Thank you so much, Gayatri, for being kind and open to sharing whatever you have learned over the years, and wishing you all the very best for anything and everything that you do. Yeah.
Thank you, Santosh. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Pleasure's all.